Shridhar. Welcome to Upstream's Tech Talk series. I'm Faye from Upstream Security, and we offer the first cloud-based cybersecurity solution that's purpose-built to connect protected vehicles and smart mobility services from cyber threats and misuse through the use of data. I'll be the host of this Upstream and handing it over to you to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Faye. Great to talk to you. My name is Shridhar. I'm based out of Dallas, Texas. Have been with Infosys for about 20 years now. Of that, I have spent about 17 years in the automotive industry. I have great passion for cars, and I love the automotive industry and the work that we do. And I have also been very fortunate to work with almost every automotive OEM, the top ones in this space. Great to talk to you.
Pleasure. Can you tell me a little bit about what Infosys does, just so our viewers become a little bit aware of that before we get into the depth of our conversation?
Yeah, Infosys is a technology consulting company. We are about over 240,000 employees globally, work in most of the countries, have a very, very large global presence. What we do with respect to is, as I said, technology consulting. We are spread across multiple verticals. I am part of the manufacturing vertical, but we do work with financial services, banking, communications, media, entertainment, service, utilities, and you name it, it's there. But primarily what we do is we help our clients in terms of multiple digital transformation, making sure that existing systems are up and running in the most efficient way. And we do a lot of business consulting as well with our clients. Cybersecurity, in fact, is one of the upcoming and growing practices for Infosys, and we are happy to see a significant value that we are adding in the cybersecurity space with our clients.
Great. So you mentioned a digital transformation. Now, within that digital transformation, we have the rise of the connected vehicle, of the shift of the automotive space to a digital space. Now, with that rise of connected vehicles and that ecosystem comes a rise of automotive data. How do you see understanding that data, whether it's through AI or other methods, playing a role within that connected vehicle space?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Faye. If you look at automotive companies over the last many years, there is a significant, amount of that data that's getting generated. And I'm going to take a step back and, give this particular answer. There's a lot of spend that is being done by the automotive companies in the space of AI with respect to autonomous vehicles, right? I think that's given. They have formed different subsidiaries, they have formed different companies, and there's a significant investment in that space. And if you really look at AI plays a great role in the autonomous part of the vehicle itself that the manufacturers are developing. However, I'm going to not talk about that because that is a topic by itself and a subject by itself. But if you really look at it, 2019, there were over 91 million vehicles that were produced or manufactured by the automakers globally. And that is significant volume of vehicles. And what does that entail for an automaker, right? If you look at automaker has broadly, I divide it into two different functions that they deal with. One is the enterprise functions. And when you look at enterprise functions, they are like finance, legal, procurement, HR, which I wouldn't say is very different for any large organization, right? But I primarily focus, and I want to focus actually on the core functions of an automaker or a manufacturer, because that is where it is very significantly different as compared to any other industry segments. And if you really look at the core functions of an automaker or a manufacturer, it starts all the way from planning, conceptualizing, designing, manufacturing, sales and marketing, and after sales, right? These are the core functions. The role of AI in enterprise functions is significant, but at the same time, I think AI is kind of adding a significant value and kind of making a deep impact on the core functions itself. If you really look at, for example, starting from planning and conceptualization, there is a significant amount of data that goes into the analysis of forecasting, and AI plays a significant role in the forecasting itself. And forecasting is not just based on the historical data, but you combine a bunch of in and around data to kind of make meaning out of it, right? And then manufacturing, again, is a large topic by itself. There's a lot of use of AI in terms of machine downtime, predictability, and all of that. I have been actually doing a lot of work in the sales and distribution and sales and marketing space, with respect to AI, where there's a significant amount of data that comes from the connected vehicle and there's a lot of meaning that you can look into it, right? And then obviously the after sales part of it, where the vehicle is in the hands of the owners and they're driving around, and there's a significant data that's coming from the vehicle itself. All that put together, I think the role of AI is significant, in the core functions with the manufacturers.
There is a lot of data, and that you had mentioned also in your answer about historical data. So we have this legacy data that's also available. We don't just have the new data that's coming once the users or the owners are in the car and driving the car. We also have that. Can you tell me a little bit about how OEMs interact with that legacy data? What are their opportunities? What can they do with that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question again, because if you really look at AI and machine learning has a lot to do with data, right? And in fact, the way I segregate this is traditional OEMs or manufacturers. I wouldn't call them legacy OEMs, but traditional OEMs. There are a lot of traditional OEMs who are big in this particular space. They've got a lot of historical data. You can call it legacy data or historical data. There's a lot of meaning that can be derived out of data, right? So that is a huge advantage for the likes of those traditional OEMs. And then there are these new players like Tesla and Rivian, who are trying to kind of gather data from the consumers now. If you really look at it, I don't know if I heard it or I have started talking about it myself. Tesla is not a car company. I think Tesla is all about data. They're learning like what Google did very, very early on. You put you put the Tesla in the hands of a consumer, and the driver is driving around, and Tesla is collecting all that data, right? So there is a significant amount of data that gets generated. Both traditional OEMs as well as the new age OEMs like Tesla, and there's a lot of meaning that could be derived out of that particular data.
And this data, let's say that the OEMs have at their hands, there's a lot of potential with it, but it needs to be normalized. There's a lot of opportunities, let's say use cases, whether that's mobility services or customer relations that can be derived, or in our case with Upstream, we normalize that data to be able to use it for cybersecurity reasons. How do you see that playing with the normalization of data, the use cases, or cybersecurity vendors like Upstream? How do you interact with that? How do you see the future or the growth of that from your perspective?
Yeah, there is tons and tons of data that's coming from the vehicles, right? As today there is a lot of the data that gets captured from the vehicle, because the vehicle is equipped today to kind of transmit that particular data. Any new vehicle that is getting produced or manufactured today is kind of has an ability and a sensor to transmit that particular data. And if you really look at it, there's a lot of data actually. In some sense, I think you talked very well about the normalization. If you really look at it, there is you can capture every click and every element of or a trigger coming from the vehicle, right? You go to the car, you open the car, you close the car, you click your ignition. Every bit of that data is getting captured. But the fundamental question is that all required, right? In fact, that's lots and lots of data. But coming to your question about the use cases, I think we are seeing a significant rise of use cases, even though I would say many of them are in a proof of concept stage. But after normalizing the data, there is a lot of meaningful insights that we can derive, right? I will take a couple of examples that we have worked with OEMs, where, for example, I can take a look at the data and see if obviously the consumers have opted in for sharing that data. That's very, very important from a privacy standpoint. I know if one of the OEMs, owners of the vehicle is visiting a competitor dealership, right? I can map that particular data and know where he or she is driving that vehicle to, at what time they are.
Seems like stalking.
Yeah, you can say it's stalking, but I don't know if the meaning of that word stalking may change, with the consumers opting in and the benefits that they are realizing. But we know everything, right? Where are they visiting? When are they visiting? Who are they visiting? How are they driving? What are the driving habits? All of that is getting captured. Now, with that, actually, there is a significant amount of to your point, risks also involved, right? The amount of data that's coming is obviously very, very needs to be very secure. It has to be kind of very well vaulted or whatever it is, right? But at the same time, of late we have also seen privacy coming into picture in a big way. it's not just the data about the vehicle, as I talked about. It is now the data about the consumers. And we have seen, laws of like GDPR that came about in Europe, and then there is a CCPA that's in US. So I think manufacturers and OEMs today have to spend a significant amount of time and energy and money in terms of securing that data and making sure that it doesn't get out or get attacked, right? Because this data, as I said, is not just about the vehicle, it is also about the consumers, and it could be a significant damage that could happen.
It's interesting, that kind of double-edged sword with the data, and the fact that you have to both secure the data, but in our case as well, in Upstream's case, we can use that data to actually secure the customers as well. So it's very interesting to look from both perspectives at this engagement with this data and within this connected vehicle space. Any last things that you want to mention to our viewers, or you want to kind of give as a last statement here?
Yeah, no, I think this is an interesting space, Faye, and glad I'm talking to you. In fact, I have been following, as I said, automotive for a very, very long time. I'm very deep into it, and I think there's a lot that is happening in this particular space. In fact, I'm happy to see actually that the National Highway Transportation Safety Association is in fact putting a significant focus on cybersecurity. They have a dedicated focus on this, and in fact they have adopted, I believe, the NIST framework and a multi-layered architecture that they are proposing, working with not just the manufacturers and the OEMs, but partners like us and the academics and all of that. So there's a significant focus that's happening, and we are also kind of very happy to partner with very, very niche players, because ecosystem is very, very important, with the likes of Upstream to deliver value to our consumers.
Especially now with both the NIST framework as well as the UNECE EWP 29 regulations, the upcoming 21434 standard from the ISO SAE, there is a lot of changes that need to be made, and we're really excited to kind of see that shift in understanding the value of data and understanding the value of connected vehicle for OEMs and the likes. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and glad to have recorded this with you.
Thank you, Faye. It was great talking to you.
Pleasure.